Mario's Italian Kitchen sat on the corner of 8th and Vine, a small family restaurant that had been serving the neighborhood for 32 years. The red and white checkered tablecloths were faded but clean. The walls displayed black and white photos of Italy, places the owner, Tony Marino, had never actually visited but dreamed about constantly. It was 9:47 p.m. on a cold November evening. The last customers had left 20 minutes ago. Tony, 58, was counting the register, while his daughter, Angela, 24, wiped down tables with aggressive, angry swipes. "Dad, we made $340 today. $340. Angela's voice was sharp with frustration. "Do you know what our rent is? What the suppliers are charging us now?" Tony didn't look up from the bills he was sorting. "We'll be fine. We always figure it out." "We're 3 months behind on rent. The landlord called me again today. He's threatening eviction." Angela threw the rag down. "We need to close this place. You need to accept reality. This restaurant is my life. Your grandfather started it. Your mother." His voice cracked. "Your mother loved this place." "Mom's been gone for 5 years, Dad, and she'd tell you the same thing I am. We're drowning." Tony's hands trembled as he counted the meager bills. Angela was right. He knew she was right, but admitting defeat felt like betraying everything his family had built. The truth was brutal. The neighborhood had changed. Trendy restaurants with fusion cuisine and Instagram-worthy presentations had opened all around them. Young professionals wanted quinoa bowls and craft cocktails, not his mother's traditional lasagna recipe. They were dinosaurs, and extinction was inevitable. A soft tap on the glass door interrupted their argument. Both turned to see a woman and a small girl standing outside, their breath fogging in the cold air. The woman was young, maybe 30, wearing a thin jacket that was clearly insufficient for the weather. The girl, no older than 6, pressed her face against the glass, her eyes gate and hopeful. Angela moved toward the door, her hand already gesturing, "We're closed." But Tony stopped her. Something about the way the little girl looked, that particular kind of hunger that went beyond just missing dinner, made him pause. He unlocked the door and opened it. "I'm sorry," the woman said immediately, her voice apologetic but desperate. "I know you're closed. I can see you're cleaning up. But I have to ask." She swallowed hard, her pride visibly crumbling. "Do you have any leftover food before you close? Anything you're going to throw away?" "My daughter. We haven't eaten since yesterday morning." The little girl clutched her mother's hand, trying to be brave but unable to hide the way her eyes kept darting to the kitchen. Angela stepped forward, her business mind already calculating. "We don't give away food. It's against policy." "Angela." Tony's voice was quiet but firm. He looked at the woman, really looked at her, saw the shame in her eyes, the way she held her daughter protectively, the desperation mixed with dignity. "Come in, please, it's cold." "Dad, we can't afford—" I said, "Come in." Tony held the door open wider. The woman hesitated, then stepped inside with her daughter, bringing a gust of cold air with them. Up close, Tony could see more details. The woman's clothes were clean but worn. Her shoes had holes. The little girl's coat was too small, her wrists sticking out several inches. "Sit, please." Tony gestured to a table near the kitchen. "What's your name?" "Rachel. This is my daughter, Sophie." The woman's voice trembled. "We just need anything. Bread, vegetables, whatever you were going to." "When did you last eat?" Tony interrupted gently. Rachel looked down. Yesterday morning, a woman at a church gave us some donuts. Sophie tugged her mother's sleeve. Mommy had the small one. She gave me the big one. Tony's heart broke. He looked at Angela, whose expression had softened despite her frustration. Give me 15 minutes, Tony said. Angela, get them some water, maybe some bread and olive oil while they wait. Dad, we can't just... Angela Maria Marino. Tony used his father voice. Get them water and bread, now. Tony moved through his kitchen with purpose. He wasn't going to give them scraps or leftovers. He was going to cook, really cook. He pulled out fresh pasta dough he'd made that morning, started water boiling, began preparing his mother's bolognese sauce from scratch. The one that took hours usually, but he knew how to speed it up when necessary. Angela came into the kitchen, arms crossed. Dad, what are you doing? We don't have money to give away food. We have enough to share one meal. We're about to lose this restaurant. Then what does it matter? Tony's voice was sharp. If we're going to lose everything anyway, at least let me do the one thing I know how to do. Feed people. Feed a hungry child. That little girl out there hasn't eaten in over a day, Angela. How can we have food and not share it? Angela was quiet for a moment. You're impossible. I learned from the best. Your grandfather used to say, if you have enough to eat and someone else doesn't, you don't have a restaurant, you have a sin. Tony stirred the sauce. Help me or don't. But I'm feeding them. After a moment, Angela sighed and started preparing a salad. You're going to make me cry, old man. Good means you still have a heart under all that business sense. 20 minutes later, Tony emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 plates. But they weren't plates of leftovers. They were full, beautiful meals. Fresh pasta with bolognese, garlic bread, Caesar salad, and, because Sophie had mentioned she liked cheese, extra parmesan. Rachel's eyes widened. This is too much. You didn't have to... Eat, Tony said simply. Please? Sophie didn't need to be told twice. She dove into the pasta with the unrestrained joy of a hungry child finally being fed. Rachel ate more slowly, tears streaming down her face. I can't pay you, Rachel said between bites. I'm so sorry. We're living in our car right now. I lost my job 3 weeks ago. The shelter was full. I've been trying to find work, but nobody will hire me without an address. And I can't get an address without money and... Her voice broke. I'm a terrible mother. I can't even feed my baby. You're not a terrible mother. Tony sat down across from her. You're a mother who's struggling. There's a difference. And you're doing what you need to do, asking for help. That takes courage. Sophie looked up from her pasta, sauce around her mouth. This is the best thing I ever ate, ever, in my whole life. Tony smiled. Yeah, you like Italian food? Sophie nodded enthusiastically. Are you a chef? I am. This is my restaurant. Me and my daughter, we run it together. When I grow up, I want to make food that makes people happy like this, Sophie said seriously. What none of them noticed was the man sitting in a car across the street. He'd been there for 40 minutes, watching through the restaurant's windows. Marcus Chen, 45, was the food critic for the Metropolitan Dining Guide, the most influential restaurant review publication in the city. A good review from Marcus could make a restaurant. A bad review could destroy it. But Marcus wasn't there in his professional capacity tonight. He was there because he was lost, not literally lost, spiritually lost, emotionally lost. 2 months ago, his teenage son had died. Overdose. Marcus had been so busy with his career, traveling to restaurants, writing scathing reviews about truffle foam and the proper temperature of consommé, that he'd missed all the signs, the depression, the drug use, the silent cries for help. His son had died alone in his room while Marcus was 3 states away, writing about a restaurant's uninspired plating. Since then, food had lost all meaning to him. Every restaurant tasted like ashes. Every meal felt obscene when his son would never eat again. Tonight, he'd been driving aimlessly, contemplating whether life was worth continuing when he'd seen the woman and child approach the closed restaurant. Some instinct made him pull over and watch. He'd watched Tony open the door, watched him not just give them scraps, but cook for them, really cook. With care and love and dignity, he'd watched the little girl's face light up, watched the mother cry tears of gratitude, watched Tony sit with them, treating them not like charity cases, but like valued guests. And for the first time in 2 months, Marcus felt something other than numbing grief. He felt something. A stirring, a reminder that kindness still existed, that humanity wasn't entirely broken, that maybe, just maybe, there was still some point to all of this. Inside the restaurant, Rachel had finished eating. She was trying to compose herself, wiping her tears with a paper napkin. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "You didn't have to do this. You have no idea what this means." "Where's Sophie's father?" Angela asked gently. Rachel's expression hardened. "Gone. Left when things got hard. Said he couldn't handle the stress of a family. Last I heard, he was living with his new girlfriend in a nice apartment downtown while we—" She gestured to herself and Sophie. "While we're here." Tony felt anger rise in his chest. How could a man abandon his child, his family? "Do you have any family? Anyone who can help?" Angela asked. "My parents died when I was young. I was in foster care, no siblings." Rachel looked at Sophie, who was carefully folding her napkin. "It's just us, but we're fighters. We'll figure it out." "What kind of work did you do?" Tony asked. "I was a bookkeeper. I'm good with numbers, organization, financial systems. I worked for a small firm, but they downsized." Rachel's voice was steady despite the tears. "I've applied to over 50 jobs in the past 3 weeks. I've got interviews scheduled, but they're all next week. I just need to keep Sophie fed and safe until then." Tony and Angela exchanged glances. "The shelter is full?" Angela asked. "Every night for the past week. They tell me to come back at 5 a.m. to try to get a spot for the next night. But by the time I walk there with Sophie, we don't have a car that runs anymore. The spots are gone." Tony made a decision. "Angela, go upstairs." "What?" "Go upstairs to the apartment. Get the spare room ready." "Dad, do it, please." Angela stared at her father, then at Rachel and Sophie. Then, without another word, she went upstairs to the small apartment above the restaurant where they lived. Tony turned to Rachel. "The apartment above the restaurant has a spare room. It's not much, it's actually pretty small, but it has a bed, heat, and a bathroom. You and Sophie can stay there tonight, maybe a few nights until you get on your feet." Rachel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I can't accept that," she finally whispered. "You don't even know me. I could be—" "You're a mother trying to take care of her daughter. That's all I need to know." Tony stood up. "Come on, let's get Sophie somewhere warm to sleep." The spare room above the restaurant was indeed small, but it was clean, warm, and safe. Angela had put fresh sheets on the bed and left out towels. Sophie looked at the bed like it was a palace. "Mommy, it's a real bed, a real bed." Rachel was crying again, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't feel like enough. Then don't say anything, Tony said gently. Just rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps. Angela's good with numbers too. Maybe she can help you prep for your interviews, update your resume. But tonight, just sleep. Be safe. Be warm. After Rachel and Sophie settled in, Tony and Angela went back downstairs to finish closing the restaurant. We can't afford this, Dad, Angela said quietly. Letting them stay. We're already behind on everything. I know. So why? Because your mother would have. Tony's voice was soft. When we first started this restaurant, we were so broke. We were living on pasta and prayers. There was this one week where we didn't know if we could make payroll. Your mother was pregnant with you, and I was terrified. Angela had heard this story before, but let her father continue. An old man used to come in every day, Mr. Peterson. He ordered the same thing, minestrone soup and bread. One day he saw your mother crying in the kitchen. She tried to hide it, but he noticed. He asked what was wrong, and she told him. You know what he did? He gave you money. He gave us exactly what we needed to make payroll. He said, pay me back when you can, or better yet, pass it forward when someone else needs it. We never saw him again after that week. I think he knew we'd try to refuse if he kept coming back, but he saved us, saved this restaurant, saved our family. Tony looked at the ceiling where Rachel and Sophie were finally safe. So yeah, we can't afford this, but we can't afford not to do it either, not if we want to live with ourselves. Marcus Chen had gone home but hadn't slept. He kept thinking about what he'd witnessed, the kindness, the humanity, the reminder that food wasn't about Michelin stars or Instagram posts. It was about nourishment, connection, love. At 6 a.m., he sat at his computer and began to write. Not a review, something else, something true. By 9 a.m., Rachel came downstairs with Sophie. They'd both showered, the first hot shower in over a week. And Sophie looked like a different child, rested, clean, fed, hopeful. Tony was already in the kitchen, preparing for the lunch service. I made breakfast, he called out. Nothing fancy, just eggs and toast. But you should eat before whatever comes next. Rachel and Sophie sat at the counter while Tony served them breakfast. Angela arrived a few minutes later, looking determined. Okay, Angela said, pulling out her laptop. I looked at your resume last night. You left it in the room. We need to update it. And I called 3 places this morning. You have interviews scheduled for this afternoon. Rachel stared. You what? I have connections. I may not be able to save this restaurant, but I can make some calls. These are good companies, real opportunities. They're expecting you at 2 p.m., 3:30 p.m., and 5 p.m. We'll watch Sophie. You go interview. I don't have interview clothes. You're about my size. I'll loan you something. Angela's voice softened. Look, I know what my dad did last night seems crazy, and financially it kind of is, but he's right. We can't have everything we need and watch other people suffer. So let's get you a job and get you back on your feet. Deal? Rachel couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. Dato, 10 a.m., the Metropolitan Dining Guide published Marcus Chen's piece. It wasn't in the review section. It was a featured article on the front page of their website. The best meal I never ate, what one restaurant taught me about food, family, and why any of this matters. Last night, I was sitting in my car, contemplating whether my life still had purpose. I was parked across from a small, struggling Italian restaurant that I'd driven past 100 times without ever noticing. Then I saw something that changed everything. I watched as the owner of this restaurant, a place I later learned is 3 months behind on rent and on the verge of closing, opened his door after hours to feed a homeless mother and child. But he didn't just give them scraps or leftovers, he cooked for them, with the same care and attention he'd give to a paying customer. Actually, with more care than I've seen in most Michelin-starred establishments. I watched as this man, who is facing his own financial ruin, treated strangers with dignity, kindness, and generosity. I watched him not just feed their bodies, but restore their spirits. I watched him do what restaurants are supposed to do, but so often forget, nourish the human soul. In my career, I've reviewed thousands of restaurants. I've eaten at the finest establishments in the world. I've judged plating, flavor profiles, service execution, ambiance. But last night, watching through a window, I witnessed what great food service actually means. It's not about foam or sous vide or wine pairings. It's about connecting with people. It's about seeing hunger, real hunger, and responding with abundance. It's about using your gifts, not just to make money, but to make a difference. Mario's Italian Kitchen will probably close soon. The economics of the restaurant industry are brutal, especially for small family establishments. But before it does, you should eat there. Not because the food is innovative or trendy, it isn't, but because it's honest, real, made with love by people who still remember that food is about more than profit margins. And because sometimes the best meals aren't the ones we eat, they're the ones we witness being given away. The article went viral. By noon, Mario's Italian Kitchen had a line around the block. People who'd read Marcus's article wanted to support the restaurant before it closed. They wanted to be part of something good. Tony and Angela were overwhelmed, frantically trying to keep up with orders. Rachel, dressed in Angela's interview clothes, stopped before leaving. "I don't know what's happening, but this is incredible," she said, watching the crowd. "It's lunch rush, just a really big one." Tony was sweating, moving between the kitchen and dining room. "Go to your interviews, we've got this." "Are you sure?" "Go!" Tony laughed. "Get your job, change your life. We'll celebrate tonight." Rachel crushed every interview. The first company, a mid-sized accounting firm, offered her a position on the spot. Good salary, benefits, start date in 2 weeks. She accepted immediately. When she returned to Mario's Italian Kitchen at 6 p.m., the restaurant was still packed. But now there were news cameras outside, reporters wanting to talk to Tony about the article. Angela pulled Rachel aside. "It's crazy. We've made more today than we made all last month. People are asking if they can donate, if they can help save the restaurant. Some investor even called wanting to discuss expansion opportunities." Rachel found Tony in the kitchen, looking dazed. "I got a job," she told him. "A good one. I start in 2 weeks. I'm going to pay you back. Every penny, the food, the room, everything." "You don't owe me." "Yes, I do. Not because of debt, but because of gratitude. You saved my daughter's life. Maybe mine too." Rachel's voice was fierce. "I will pay it back, and then I'll pass it forward, just like you did." Mario's Italian Kitchen didn't close. The surge of customers after Marcus's article had been enough to pay off their debts and then some. An investor, inspired by the story, had offered to help them expand without losing their family atmosphere. They'd hired 2 new staff members. One of them was Rachel, who now managed their books and finances while working her day job. Sophie came to the restaurant after school, doing homework at the counter, while Tony taught her simple cooking tasks. Marcus Chen had become a regular customer. He'd taken a leave from his critic job to write a book about food and humanity and finding meaning after loss. The first chapter was about watching Tony feed a hungry child and remembering what mattered. One evening, as the dinner service wound down, Tony found Sophie in the kitchen, carefully stirring a pot of sauce under Angela's supervision. "How's my apprentice chef doing?" Tony asked. Sophie beamed. "Angela says I'm a natural. She says I have good instincts." "You know what that means?" Tony asked. "It means you cook with your heart, not just your hands." "Mr. Tony." Sophie's voice got serious. "Why did you help us that night? My mom says we were strangers. Why did you feed us?" Tony knelt down to Sophie's level. "You want to know the secret to good cooking?" Sophie nodded eagerly. "It's not about fancy ingredients or expensive equipment. It's about remembering that every person who comes through your door is hungry for something. Sometimes it's food, sometimes it's kindness, sometimes it's just someone seeing them and treating them like they matter." He tapped her chest gently. "You cook with this, you cook with love. And when you do that, you're not just feeding bodies, you're feeding souls." "I want to cook like that," Sophie said seriously. "When I grow up, I want to have a restaurant where everyone feels special." "Then that's exactly what you'll do." The Metropolitan Dining Guide ran another feature story, this one written by a different author. Mario's Italian Kitchen, 5 years after the meal that changed everything. 5 years ago, food critic Marcus Chen wrote an article that went viral and saved a struggling family restaurant. Today, Mario's Italian Kitchen is thriving, but not in the way you'd expect. They haven't expanded into a chain. They haven't opened multiple locations or pursued a Michelin star. Instead, they've done something more revolutionary. They've created a pay-it-forward program. Every night, Mario sets aside 10 meals for anyone who walks in and says they're hungry. No questions asked, no shame, no judgment, just food served with dignity. They've also started a culinary training program for at-risk youth and people experiencing homelessness, teaching cooking skills, and helping them find employment in the food service industry. "That night changed my life," says Tony Marino, 63, the restaurant's founder. "I almost lost everything. I was so focused on survival that I forgot why I started cooking in the first place. To feed people, to nourish them. When I remembered that, everything else fell into place." Rachel Foster, now the restaurant's CFO and partner, agrees. "Tony and Angela saved my life and my daughter's life when we had nothing. Now we get to do that for other people. That's not just good business, that's good humanity." And Sophie Foster, 11, who now helps in the kitchen after school, she's already planning her future. "I'm going to be a chef like Mr. Tony," she says confidently. "And I'm going to have a restaurant where everyone is welcome, where nobody goes hungry, where food means love." If that's not the future of the restaurant industry, it should be. On a cold November evening, exactly 5 years after that first night, Tony stood in his kitchen, preparing the evening service. Through the window, he could see the dining room filling up. Families, couples, a few people alone, and in the corner, a woman with 2 children looking nervous. Angela appeared at his elbow. "There's a family in the corner. They look like they need help." Tony looked through the window and saw the familiar signs, the worn clothes, the hungry eyes, the shame mixed with desperate hope. "Go talk to them," Tony said quietly. "Ask if they'd like dinner, our treat." Angela smiled. "Sophie wants to help cook tonight. Is that okay?" Tony watched 11-year-old Sophie carefully washing her hands, tying on her apron with serious concentration. "Yeah, it's perfect. Teach her the bolognese, my mother's recipe, the one we made that first night." "Dad?" Angela's voice was soft. "Are you happy with how everything turned out?" Tony thought about it. They were successful now, but not rich. They worked hard. The restaurant was always busy, but never fancy. They gave away as much as they earned sometimes. But when he looked at Sophie learning to cook, at Rachel managing their accounts with pride, at the family in the corner about to be fed, at Marcus, Chen sitting at his usual table, working on his second book, at Angela who'd learned that success wasn't just about profit margins. "Yeah," Tony said. "I'm happy, I'm feeding people, I'm making a difference. That's all I ever wanted to do." Mom would be proud. Yeah, she would. That night, they served the family in the corner a beautiful meal. The children ate with the same joyful enthusiasm Sophie had shown 5 years ago. The mother cried the same grateful tears Rachel had cried, and the cycle of kindness continued. Because Tony had learned the secret that too many people forget. The best investment isn't in stocks or real estate or even successful businesses. It's in people, in kindness, in choosing to see hunger and responding with abundance, in remembering that we're all just one bad day, one lost job, one tragedy away from being the person asking, "Do you have any leftover food before you close?" And in those moments, we need someone to answer, not with leftovers, but with love. If this story touched your soul, we need you to do something right now. Like this video if you believe in the power of kindness over profit. Comment and tell us. Have you ever been the person asking for help? Or have you been the person who gave it? Share your story. This is a safe space. Your words might inspire someone else. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what it means to be human in a world that often values money over compassion. Share this video with someone who works in food service, hospitality, or any job where they serve others. Let them know their kindness matters. But here's what we really want you to do. The next time you see someone who's hungry, struggling, or in need, do something. You don't have to be a billionaire to change a life. You don't need a fortune to show compassion. Sometimes all it takes is buying an extra meal and giving it away, paying for someone's coffee, leaving a generous tip for someone who's working hard, saying "I see you" to someone who feels invisible. Rachel and Sophie weren't asking for charity. They were asking for dignity. And Tony didn't give them leftovers. He gave them respect. That's the difference between helping and healing. Challenge for this week. Do one act of unexpected kindness for someone who's struggling. Not for recognition, not for social media, just because it's right. Then come back and tell us about it in the comments. Drop a heart if you've ever been hungry, physically or emotionally, and someone fed you. Drop a hand if someone's kindness once saved you. Drop a smile if you're going to support a small local restaurant this week. To every restaurant owner, server, chef, and food service worker reading this, you're not just serving food, you're serving humanity. Every meal you make with care, every customer you treat with dignity, every person you see as a human being and not just a ticket number, that matters. Never underestimate the power of feeding someone who's hungry. You might be saving more than you know. New stories every week about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Because in a world that often feels cruel and divided, we choose to celebrate the people who still choose kindness. See you in the next story. Now go out there and be the reason someone believes in good people. A message to anyone who's struggling right now. If you're the person sleeping in your car, if you're choosing between feeding yourself or your kids, if you're too ashamed to ask for help, if you feel invisible and forgotten, you are seen, you are valued, you deserve dignity. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's courage. Resources. Call 211 for local food banks and emergency assistance. FindHelp.org connects you with free resources. FeedingAmerica.org has a food bank locator. You are not alone, and your situation is not permanent. To everyone else, be the Tony in someone's story. Be the reason someone doesn't give up. The world changes one meal, one moment, one act of kindness at a time. This story is fiction, but the hunger is real. The struggle is real. The choice to help is real. What will you choose? Dedicated to every person who's ever fed a stranger, helped someone in need, or chose compassion over convenience. You are the best of humanity.